Baseball, our nation's pastime, has become an incredibly inclusive sport with athletes from nearly every possible background. The early days of the game, however, were not so inclusive. Baseball has a complicated history of discrimination based on race that closely mirrors the racial atmosphere of the United States throughout the decades. In this exhibit, a collection of items, images, and stories have all been assembled to document the rich history of black baseball in Savannah. The inter-city and interstate leagues operated loosely, always finding a way to stay afloat, with teams coming and going, and the level of play never being greater than that of the minor leagues. However, during the mid-1940s to the mid-1950s, competition was at an all-time high. In 1946, Sportsman Park was completed. This was the second ballpark owned and operated by African Americans in Savannah, and the park opened to great fanfare. Sportsman Park, located in the Tremont Park area, was an eye-opener to fans. The park featured 2 bleacher stands, affording accommodations for about 900 fans, as well as a motel and a club.
And you had people selling different things out there. A person named Mr. Carl Wright, he would sell his crabs, and other people would sell dinners and stuff. It was just a nice, wholesome, good thing for the family. A lot of people look forward to having a good time out there on Sunday. Excuse me.
Before dog.
And I was one of them, yeah. I was one of them.
That's before dog.
Before dog.
That's right. Because the wholesome people went home. Because when I went, I always went after dark. And Houdini has a song saying the freaks come out at night. But I'm not saying that's what I was. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to go when I know it was going to be fun. So I would go out there, and myself and my cousin Joanne, which is another cousin of ours, we would go out there. And we wanted to be nosy, really, because every Monday you hear about what went on at Sportsman Park. I was like, well, what's the big deal about Sportsman Park? She said, we're going to sneak out there. So that's what we did. We went out there, and we got out there. It just overwhelmed us. It just blew our mind. We was like, wow, all this going on. You had people over here. Yeah, man, remember when he did so and so, blah, blah, blah. You got the big old bar, and then the club, and the food, and the barbecue, and the people dancing and gyrating, women with short skirts. It was like softball back to back to back to back. Sometimes it was just leagues that they built on their own. Sometimes it was sugar refinery versus...
Then you had people coming from out of town.
Yep, you had people coming from out of town. And sometimes you had all these people versus people, so it was all day long. It started like, 8 in the morning? Lasted all the way to 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was just like all day long. If my grandma would have caught me out there, she'd have beat me all the way home walking with an extension cord.
And then a lot of the people who played softball got into relationships.
Yeah.
You know, and some of them probably still, like me and Trisha, we still married.
Baseball made love.
Sportsman Park housed the best team in the local league, the Savannah Bears. The Bears were the only team in Savannah to have their own stadium. The other teams, like the Savannah Kilowatts, only had a sandlot-style field. Gregory Grant, a Savannah local from Can Park, recounts what it was like to play there.
And Can Park is not only a community, but a actual park itself. And it was one of the few actual parks in which we had to play. Sunday games were played there. The park was really... I can remember playing Little League and Pony League ball there, and we were hitting the balls out of the park, and you can imagine grown men out there playing, but surprisingly, no windows, no cars or anything, were maybe side dents, but for the most part, no one ever destroyed anything. The Can Park team was called the Savannah Kilowatts. Their sponsor, it was Savannah Electric, and their little emblem was a lightning bolt, arms and legs with a light bulb head, and he was known as Reddy Kilowatt. So the Can Park team was known as the Savannah Kilowatts. Out of all the years that I sat there, and from the 1950s all the way to the 1960s, the early 1960s is when I moved from the Can Park area. There were baseball games being played on Sundays, and not once was there ever a fight. Not once was there ever any kind of arguments other than, the call at third base and stuff like that. But as soon as you left the field, you heard the grumbling on the sidelines and on the bench, but that's as far as it ever went. But yeah, those were truly to me the good days. And what was unique about, and I can talk about Can Park, was because on Sunday, all the residents would sit on their porch and they would sit there and watch the game that way.
The Savannah Bears had the best talent in Savannah due to their impressive stadium that lured talented ball players from across the city to join the team. The talent was so great that two former Bears, Nate Bobo Smalls and Russell Crazy Legs Patterson, went on to play professional baseball in the Negro leagues with the world-famous Indianapolis Clowns.
It wasn't nothing to do in Savannah at that time. You know, coming from Savannah, where I came from, guys know how to dance and guys know how to play baseball. And we just, guys that came from Savannah was unique ball players because we did things that other ball players didn't dream about doing. That's where I learned all my skills: baseball, basketball, football. I learned everything out of Yamagra. I was a good entertainer. They used to call me the second coming of Metal Lock Lemon. So when I started with the Clowns, it wasn't hard for me to do. I just had to catch on. It's an old saying: if you left Savannah and went any other way in the United States and couldn't make it, you wasn't from Savannah.
The Bears was it in Savannah. You know, it was something that made you better because you played with older guys. At a young age, we were like 16, 17 years old, 18 years old. As a younger kid, you know, we played. We learned a lot. Most of the guys didn't, you know, we 17, 18 years old, might have been 15, but most of the guys was in their 30s, and they was either trying to go to the minor league or from the minor league, and racism, it was just bad. We were the best team from Jacksonville, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. Okay. I put it that way. We were the best team, and it proved it. Yeah.
Back in the streets of Savannah, when children did not have either enough friends to assemble a team or they did not have access to a field due to the color of their skin, children would play the Savannah game of half rubber. The children of Savannah loved the game, and Mr. Grant remembers the game fondly.
Now, there's a big argument, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there's a big argument between Charleston and Savannah who organized this. And it's a game called half rubber. And we'll get a rubber ball, red rubber ball about that size, cut it in half at the seam. Oh my gosh, and our parents, my mother used to hate us because we would sneak in the house and we would get the broomstick, which would be about this size. We would cut the broom off, the mop off, and that was our bat. And talking about developing an eye for the ball, because if you can sit there and you would sail it, and if you could sit there and hit that rubber ball, that half a rubber ball, with a broomstick, your batting just improved. And but that was one of the things that we started playing at a young age. That was my true beginning of baseball.
In 1953, the minor league, South Atlantic League, also referred to as the Sally, integrated with both the Jacksonville and Savannah ball clubs fielding African American ball players. The Savannah Indians, operating out of Grayson Stadium, rostered Elbert Izzy Israel of Macon, Georgia, and Fleming Jr. Reedy of Savannah, Georgia. The Jacksonville Stars had the most standout player in the league, Henry Aaron. The addition of 5 African American ball players to the starting roster created a dramatic increase in attendance from the local African American community. Unfortunately for the local teams and leagues, when the integration of professional baseball started, many players and fans abandoned their local teams for the spectacle of professional baseball.
The Clowns was the last black baseball team to play in the Negro League. All other teams had folded. In 1955, they started dropping off because the major leagues started getting picking up all the black ball players. And the Clowns was the last team that was left. The money situation wasn't what it was. So we started playing with 13 ball players. And we would play any team that would come along. Scouts used to come to the Clowns every year. And every year that they would come, Ed could have sold me. I don't know how many times, but he couldn't sell me because I was a meal ticket.
But I really I learned a lot from the clown. Not only playing the game about what life was all about. I mean, we had some experience, man. It was just, oh Lord, it was near death. You know, we had to stay on the bus, no air conditioning. It was a great bus, no air conditioning, and if it's hot, we had to sleep under the bus. You know, and how we stopped a lot of places in the south and the north that we couldn't get diesel fuel or gas. You know, the hotels we couldn't get into. It was unbelievable. Yeah, we went through a lot, and that's why I try to tell people, the story about the Negro League. It wasn't no himmy. It wasn't that good. But I just think the Negro Baseball League, they should have stopped when they should have stopped, and go ahead and give us our glory and get it over with.
Sportsman Park was hit the hardest in this transition. Black fans no longer traveled to the Tremont neighborhood, and soon the park fell into disrepair. In 2018, after many years of lying vacant, the land was sold and Sportsman Park was demolished. Sportsman's Park is one of the many lost ballparks that succumbed to the allure of integration. As time continues to move forward, it is important that the stories, achievements, and locations used during the period of Negro League baseball are preserved before they're bulldozed from the memories of the local communities.
I went down 516 going into Savannah, and I passed that way many a times, but the light bulb came on that the stadium is gone. I mean, that hurt me. That was one of those true historical landmarks that should have stayed, whereas the city of Savannah, if it's not in that little historical district, they could care less about it. But that was something that should have stayed there because of not only the history of Savannah, but the black history of Savannah.